Let's go!
There was a very interesting article that popped up earlier this week from the lead producer at Sega for Virtua Fighter Ultimate Showdown. I made a tweet about this with relative enthusiasm, and I don't think I need to say much, but the headline of this article kind of says it all. Lead producer of Virtua Fighter, Seiji Aoki, says it's essential for future Virtua Fighter games to have rollback netcode. Wow, way to get my attention, writer. Good job. You did it. You got me. I feel like a future Virtua Fighter is a given. I feel like that's something that is going to happen. It's not before Ultimate Showdown, it was pretty much an impossibility, but after the success of Ultimate Showdown and what they were saying about it afterwards, it is definitely, it's happening. It's just, how long is it going to take to happen? How many PlayStation 7s do we have to wait to get? I hope it isn't that many. There was a lot of excitement during the very first teaser for VF Ultimate Showdown. Could you share what it was like seeing those reactions to Virtua Fighter coming back? So VF is one of Sega's representative titles and has always been a long wait since the last game. Being able to see the surprise excitement from the fans was a moving experience on all of us in the dev team. But they already started on the time of this announcement. There were a lot of uncertainties and worries, such as the impact of the pandemic. Not wanting to let down the fans, we unified as a team and managed to release the game for Sega's 60th anniversary. I still vividly remember the sense of accomplishment. I felt we were able to achieve this. By the way, he confirmed, maybe it was about a year and a half ago now, that the development of Ultimate Showdown, putting Virtua Fighter in a completely new engine, in the what, like a Dragon engine, whatever the heck it's called, took about a year. That was it. Only about a year to get everything ported over with relative high accuracy, which is pretty insane. The Dragon engine, yeah. It's been 2 years now since the release of VF Ultimate Showdown. Is there anything you've learned since this time period? Ooh. The release of our latest title made me realize once again that the series is popular worldwide and it has many fans. Because the game was a remake, esports elements were added to the match to match the gaming landscape, and the graphics were completely rebuilt from scratch. As a result, it received lots of love from fans, but our development team still encountered some issues and learning opportunities. How did you feel seeing VF on the stage at EVO Japan? There were a ton of participants, and I think it was the most exciting in-person tournament I'd seen in recent years. I enjoyed that electrifying atmosphere that you can only experience at these type of events, and interacting with all the fans was a lot of fun. I hope I can attend EVO Las Vegas in the future. Do you personally get involved with local Virtua Fighter tournaments? I'm not that great of a Virtua Fighter, so if I participated and be eliminated very quick, but I think there are a lot of casual players, so it'd probably be good to prepare a system or environment where they can play the game without having to worry about skill, as with every fighting game that wants to be a video game and not just an esport. In a lot of circles, Virtua Fighter holds reputation for being incredibly high execution among 3D fighters. How does that feel to hold that? So, when VF was released in '93, it was the first 3D fighting game to hit the market. It became a massive hit and a landmark title in the 3D genre. Since then, there have been many other titles that have emerged in the genre, but in terms of one-on-one subgenre, the fact that the original game's mechanics can still be considered refined and top-notch today, 30 years later, is something we take a lot of pride in. And despite Ultimate Showdown having incredibly polished visuals, a lot of fans, including myself, really love the more lo-fi audio for the characters' voice lines. Is that an aesthetic or something the game is committed to maintaining? Since VF5 US was a remake based on Final Showdown, we decided it would be best to keep the voices and atmosphere of the original game. However, it was released such a long time ago, many of the voice actors who worked on it have either retired or cannot be reached. So there is another game. If there is another game, we will probably have to re-record all the voice lines. That makes sense, because it was 15 years old at that point. Even though there hasn't been a new VF for many years before US, many fans enjoyed it via Like a Dragon series. Were you aware of people playing the game this way? Yes, because I supervised the implementation of VF as a minigame. I think it's one of the more popular minigames in the series, and I hope people will continue to play it in future titles as well. Right now, the only way you can play VF on PC is technically in Like a Dragon, right? It's like the one way you can actually play it on PC is actually as a side minigame that I think is selectable on the main menu if you wanted to play 2 players or something like that. Since the release of US, or any other fighting styles and cultures that have caught your eye that you might want to add to future titles? So we're talking a lot about future titles here, is what I'm getting out of this, right? Boiling down to what would you do in the future, right? How would you change this in the future? If you could do this later, what would you do? And nowadays, global expansion is a must for console games. Due to that, I think understanding different cultures and customs around the world is crucial when designing a game. With new fighting styles that are added in the future, I'd like to keep that in mind and conduct through research and examination. Wow. We also covered a lot of ground on how VF series would need to adapt to modern fighting games, specifically when it comes to beginners. The FGC has grown considerably since the beginning of Virtua Fighter's release, which means that there is many more players to introduce such a cornerstone of fighting game culture. Admittedly, more fighting games have sprung out in the last mainline Virtua Fighter title. As a big esports game, what can you guys do about winning over new and returning players to invest into your game? So while it's important to create content for fighting game fans, I think it's also important to create content that viewers or newcomers to fighting games genre can enjoy. Smart man. For example, I can't play soccer, but I love watching soccer. I'd love to create content that would interest those watching the game and make them fans. Hey, when Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown came out, I knew dick of how to play it. I was just a big fan. You know what I loved about Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown? When I was just sitting on the main menu, the game would start firing up replays of other people playing Virtua Fighter currently that are really good. Absolutely loved that. I thought that was a great addition to the game, and I hope that other fighting games do the same thing. One comment many players outside of Japan had about Ultimate Showdown was about the game's netcode. Considering how almost every major title has either announced a new entry with rollback or is getting a new entry, did you ever consider doing the same for Virtua Fighter? Before I read the answer for this, Sega in the past has said that the reason they never made a new Virtua Fighter game was because that they didn't feel they had anything revolutionary or like invigorating to the point where they can expand the fighting game genre. Their mentality behind every VF game is that we're going to actively do something wild, new, and different that you have never seen before in fighting games. And yes, going all the way until Virtua Fighter 5, they did something wild, crazy, and different that had never been seen before. So all that innovation did come to a head because they looked at the fighting game space and looked at Tekken and other fighting games who were like, well, we could do what they're doing, and they just didn't make games, right? So to a point where it's like, yeah, there's a little bit of like their nose is up, but at the same point, I see a spot where Virtua Fighter can absolutely try to expand the fighting game space. And it isn't like, you know, more 3D arenas or more poly characters or more motion capture or any of the kind of stuff in the past that has made Virtua Fighter revolutionary. I think it would be with online. I think if you seriously tackle online and you make the first 3D fighting game with amazing netcode and truly make it a worldwide game where you can play anybody from anywhere in the world at Virtua Fighter and it should run good, I think tackling that kind of shit should be top priority. And that should be where the majority of their budget goes. If you want to talk about expanding Virtua Fighter and adding a level of like creativity to the series, I think it should actually be in online. No shit. That's where you could do some stuff that actually hasn't been done before. Since online matches are a core component of fighting games nowadays, netcode support has been absolutely essential. As you know, VF5 US is a remake based on VF5 Final Showdown. When Final Showdown was released on 360 and PS3, the concept of rollback was not very well known, so I developed and implemented my own mechanism to reduce delays. The netcode in the latest title is similar in nature. However, I believe that implementing rollback will be absolutely necessary when developing future titles. Slow clap for the person currently talking. So Virtua Fighter, the new one, Ultimate Showdown, does still use delay-based netcode. However, their solution for making the delay less bad was to kind of put servers all over the place, all over the world, where you don't have to respond from peer to peer, where the delay is going to get really, really chunky and big. No, instead it'll connect to a middle point where both players are essentially relaying that information from a middle point and then spitting it back out to the other player. So instead of it taking 200 milliseconds to reach your partner, it might take 100 milliseconds. So that would be great. That would actually, that has an impact on delay-based netcode to make it a little bit better. Tekken might be doing something like that. It might be. Considering how most modern fighting games have started to adopt the shift to more aggressive universal mechanics. Oh, Virtua Fighter doesn't have to worry about this. Most fighting games are making them hella aggro, where the aggressor is always, you know, at the advantage. Do you think that's something we might need to see in a Virtua Fighter title? Bro, you got that handled. You don't need to worry about that shit. Virtua Fighter is aggressive as fuck. It's like the most fucking aggressive game ever, naturally. To the point where if you're not doing something in Virtua Fighter, you're playing the game wrong, even at the highest level. And that's wild to think that even at the very highest level of VF, you should be doing something. You should be being offensive in some way. The game benefits nobody from playing to this distance. It only benefits each other to play from this distance. It's crazy. Virtua Fighter doesn't even do shit. In its natural mechanics, you don't need heat, you don't need green shit, you don't need any of that shit. The game already forces you to fight from this point. This is a good answer. I feel like fighting games are becoming too complicated these days. I have some doubts about this trend of creating overcomplicated systems and then trying to patch that up later with ease of entry mechanics. Regarding that aspect, I think battle mechanics in Virtua Fighter are really simple and easy to understand. This is a design philosophy I'd like to maintain in future titles of the series. So, this guy gets it. Obviously gets it. He understands what makes Virtua Fighter and what makes the engagement of it. To the point where Tekken has been trying to chase this for quite some time, and in Tekken 8 they are almost Virtua Fightering the fuck out of Tekken, where they're forcing that engagement with mechanics. However, Virtua Fighter, through its intrinsic design, I'd have to actually like really do a deep dive in like, so why does this happen? Like in what way does the risk reward mitigation in Virtua Fighter work where it's always got people fighting close range, right? That's interesting to me that VF already has solutions for that. Did every VF have solutions for that? Not exactly. Like maybe not every single one, but Virtua Fighter 4 and beyond, when like the modern VF style started evolving and getting figured out, yeah, those games were starting to all play this way, where you have to be close and engaging your opponent. This is cool that the devs get it. Virtua Fighter is a game that's almost over-designed, right? Where they thought about shit so much, almost in every single way, that they got almost like too deep in some situations with character weight and per character combos and all this kind of crazy shit. The surface level of VF is incredibly simple, but it is insanely complex at the highest level. Just it's a game that you just, as soon as you play more of it, you feel yourself getting faster and faster and faster. And the nuttiest part is that you just keep getting faster to the highest level. Like even at the highest level, people just start playing the game ridiculously fast, and the person playing the game faster than the other person usually has a fucking advantage. Indeed, I think all this stuff is great, but I think the complexity also is a beautiful part of VF, and that's not something that should go away. The nice part is that Virtua Fighter is not complex at a base level. It's something that has always been memed about in the FGC for 10 plus years, that Virtua Fighter is crazy complicated, because yes, in competitive VF, it is crazy complicated, and you have to train for a ridiculous amount of scenarios just to solve some basic shit out, and then it happens once every like 10 matches. That complexity is beautiful, right? Some of it should go away. Granted, I think character weight and all that shit should go away, but the majority of the game and allowing people to figure out how to do all this stuff with all these tools and characters designed in a way where it's like, oh, they thought of this. They thought of this, they thought of that, they thought of this, they thought of that, is fucking crazy. The good thing about VF's control scheme is that even if you're not playing optimally, it's very easy to pick up and fun since there are few buttons. Was that always intentional? One defining aspect of VF is letting players directly move their characters in deft ways via simple controls. I've heard that the original VF was developed as a simulation game, so there was an emphasis placed on simple controls and realistic movement. I would like to preserve this design philosophy in the future. Absolutely. Yeah, we're not going to get 6-button VF. Don't worry. So this was a very nice interview, because coming from somebody who's kind of like at the top of VF right now, responsible for Ultimate Showdown coming out, Seiji Aoki, my apologies if I'm pronouncing it wrong, and we've done a couple of different like, you know, talking pieces on the VF guys when they're talking with Harada and stuff like that. It's nice to see how grounded they are and how much they get it. It's nice to see that if there is a new Virtua Fighter in the future, if Virtua Fighter 6 is a reality, which I think it's just gonna be, I personally think we're getting a VF6 at some point. I don't know when, but I think it is going to happen, that it seems to be in good hands. And you would think after 15 years that maybe the spirit of Virtua Fighter and, well, we gotta add supers to characters, we gotta do this, we gotta do that, we gotta add guest characters, maybe like all those things that have been alluring for fighting game fans for so long, maybe that isn't necessary in Virtua Fighter. Maybe the whole point of VF is that it's pure. I find that eloquent because that is what Virtua Fighter always has been. It has been the pure game, like pure fighting mechanics. No crazy bullshit, no crazy guest characters, just characters fighting with fight styles from around the world, and they punch, they kick, and they guard, and a combination of all of those attacks in between. And that is, in my opinion, the spirit of VF. where you kind of have to keep that moving forward in some way. Ultimately, like, yeah, some things need to get tuned and figured out for a new VF game, but knowing that people like this are there in some way, either helping craft a new Virtua Fighter game or bring the franchise to new people, is good to know that it's in the right hands. And considering the success of Ultimate Showdown, it's crazy to think that this old-ass series that you think nobody would give a shit about anymore pulled in a ton of players and apparently did very well, because even coming from their mouth directly, it was very successful. You know what, in my opinion, should the future of Virtua Fighter be in some way? My dream reality for a future Virtua Fighter, if this is a game that obviously focuses really hard on fighting other players with your virtual character, it needs to have amazing net play, and it also should be free to play. A controversial topic, right? We're gonna let Project L tackle all of those things kind of first, but man, I think if there's a series that should do that in some way, it brought a lot of success to VF Ultimate Showdown when it came out, and I think the Netcode thing is the next biggest thing to tackle after that.